I met Kenny at my cousin Rachel's wedding in the summer of 2019. He was standing by the bar, nursing a whiskey, neat, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread, perfectly tailored navy suit, that kind of easy confidence that made everyone in the room gravitate toward him. When our eyes met across the crowded reception hall, he raised his glass with this crooked smile that made my stomach flip. I should have known then that men who smile like that, like they already know how the story ends, are dangerous. "You must be Nancy," he said when I finally worked up the courage to approach the bar. "Rachel's told me all about her brilliant cousin who works in tech." I laughed, feeling my cheeks warm. Brilliant might be overselling it. "I mostly just stare at code until my eyes blur." "Modest too," he said, extending his hand. "Kenny Morrison. I work with Rachel's husband at the investment firm." His handshake was firm, warm, and he held on just a second longer than necessary. We talked through the entire reception, about everything and nothing. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room worth talking to. He asked real questions, remembered details from earlier in the conversation, made these observations that showed he was actually listening. By the time the DJ announced the last dance, I was completely smitten. "Would you like to grab coffee sometime?" he asked as the lights came up. "I mean, if you don't have a policy against dating guys you meet at weddings, I might be willing to make an exception," I said, trying to play it cool even though my heart was racing. Our first date was the following Thursday. He picked this little Italian place in the North End, candlelit and intimate. Over plates of homemade pasta, he told me about growing up in Boston, losing his dad young, working his way through college. There was this vulnerability in his eyes when he talked about his struggles that made me want to protect him somehow. When he walked me to my door that night, he kissed my hand instead of going for the lips. "I want to do this right," he said. "You're not like other women I've dated, Nancy. You're substantial." I should have heard the backhanded nature of that compliment, but I was too dizzy with attraction to notice. The first 6 months were magical. Kenny had this way of making ordinary moments feel special. He'd show up at my office with lunch on days when he knew I had back-to-back meetings. He'd leave little notes in my apartment when he stayed over, stuck to the bathroom mirror, tucked into my laptop bag. "You're incredible," they'd say, or "Thank you for existing." I kept every single one in a shoebox under my bed. He moved in after 8 months. It seemed fast, but it felt so right. His lease was up, and he was at my place most nights anyway. "Why waste money on 2 rents?" he said, and it made perfect sense. He brought his expensive suits, his collection of first edition books, his Italian espresso machine that probably cost more than my monthly salary. My little apartment suddenly felt more sophisticated, more adult. The first red flag came 3 weeks after he moved in. I came home from work to find him on the couch, still in his pajamas at 6 p.m., playing video games. "Rough day?" I asked, setting down my bag. He didn't look away from the screen. "I quit." "You, what?" "I quit the firm. The whole corporate culture was toxic, Nancy. They wanted me to do things that went against my principles." My stomach dropped. "Kenny, we should have talked about this." "What about rent? Bills?" He finally paused the game, turning to me with those earnest brown eyes. "Baby, this is temporary. I've got leads on something much better. Something in venture capital where I can actually make a difference. Just give me a month or 2 to land the right opportunity. You know I'm good for it." And I believed him. God help me. I believed every word. He was so convincing, so confident. He showed me emails from headhunters, had phone interviews that I could hear from the other room. He dressed in his suits every morning like he was going to meetings. I found out later he was going to the gym, the library, coffee shops, anywhere but job interviews. 2 months turned into 4, 4 turned into 6. The excuses evolved, the market was tough, they wanted someone with more experience, the perfect opportunity was just around the corner. Meanwhile, I was covering everything: rent, utilities, groceries, his gym membership, even his credit card minimums because his savings had run out. "I'm going to pay you back every penny," he'd say, pulling me close at night. "With interest. You're investing in our future, baby. When I land this next role, we're going to look back and laugh about this rough patch." By our 2-year anniversary, I was drowning. My savings account that once held $15,000 was down to less than $1,000. I was putting groceries on credit cards, skipping my own meals so we'd have enough for dinner, telling my friends I couldn't go out because I was saving for something special. The special thing I was saving for was keeping us afloat. Kenny, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to our financial reality. He'd still insist on buying premium coffee beans, would sulk if I suggested generic brands at the grocery store, acted personally offended when I mentioned maybe he could pick up some freelance work. "I'm not going backward, Nancy," he said one night when I brought up a contract position I'd seen online. "I've worked too hard to take some junior role. It would damage my reputation, make it harder to get what I really deserve." "What about what I deserve?" I snapped, finally losing my patience. "I deserve a partner who contributes." His face changed then, this cold expression I'd never seen before. "You think I don't contribute? Who helped you become more confident? Who pushed you to ask for that raise last year? Who makes you feel special when the world treats you like you're average?" The words stung because there was truth mixed in with the manipulation. He had made me feel special. He had encouraged me to advocate for myself at work, but he'd also made me feel like I needed him to be worth something. "I'm sorry," I found myself saying. "I'm just stressed about money. Money isn't everything, Nancy. But if it means that much to you, I'll figure something out." 3 days later, he came home with a huge grin and a bottle of champagne. "I got it," he announced. "The position at Vertex Ventures. Senior analyst, 6 figures, starting next month." I nearly cried with relief. We celebrated that night, ordered takeout from the expensive sushi place, made love like we hadn't in months, stayed up talking about our future. He painted pictures of the house we'd buy, the trips we'd take, the life we'd build together. "There's just one thing," he said as we lay in bed afterward. "They need me to travel to New York for a few weeks of training. The company covers lodging, but I'll need some money for expenses, food, transportation, that kind of thing. Maybe $2,000? I'll pay you back from my first paycheck." I transferred him $2,500 the next morning, throwing in extra because I wanted him to feel supported the way he claimed I'd never made him feel. He left for New York on a Monday morning, kissing me goodbye at the door with promises to call every night. The first week, he did. He told me about the training sessions, the other analysts, the corporate apartment in Manhattan. His voice was energized in a way I hadn't heard in months. The second week, the calls became text messages. "In sessions all day, baby. Miss you." The third week, the messages stopped altogether. I tried not to panic. Maybe he was just busy, overwhelmed with information, trying to make a good impression. But when I called Vertex Ventures to leave a message, the receptionist said they had no record of a Kenny Morrison. My hands were shaking as I hung up. I called again, thinking I'd misheard. Same answer. I looked up their website, searched their staff directory, even called their New York office. Nothing. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into his email. We knew each other's passwords. It wasn't really snooping, I told myself. Just checking in. The first thing I saw was a credit card statement. A charge for $2,800 at Tiffany's, dated 3 days after he left. My blood ran cold. I scrolled through his messages, my heart pounding. There were emails from someone named Melissa, photos of the two of them, messages about meeting her parents. And then, the one that shattered me completely. "Can't wait to see the ring, baby. Mom is already planning the engagement party. Thank God you finally left that clingy girl in Boston. Like you said, she's the kind of girl men settle for when they can't get what they really want." I threw up. Actually ran to the bathroom and threw up. Then I sat on the bathroom floor and called him. It went straight to voicemail. "I know about Melissa," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I know about the ring. I know everything. You have 24 hours to explain yourself. Or, I'm changing the locks." He called back within an hour. "Nancy, baby, you don't understand. It's not what it looks like. You bought another woman an engagement ring with my money. I can explain. She's nothing. Her father owns a venture capital firm. I was networking, trying to get us a better life. The ring was it was strategic. I was going to return it." "Strategic?" I laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "You strategically got engaged to another woman?" "I'm not engaged. Nancy, please, you have to believe me. I was trying to secure funding for my own firm. Her father won't invest in anyone who isn't family. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I got the money. Then I was going to break it off and come home to you." "Come home to me? Kenny, you told her I was clingy. You said I was the kind of girl men settle for." I had to say something to make it believable. "Baby, you know I don't think that. You know you're everything to me, but I didn't know that. In fact, sitting on my bathroom floor, I realized I didn't know anything about the man I'd shared my life with for 2 years. "Don't come back," I said. "I'm packing your things. You can pick them up from the super. Nancy, don't do this. I'm getting on a bus right now. We need to talk in person." I hung up and turned off my phone. The next 3 days were a blur. I called in sick to work, something I never did. I packed everything of his into boxes, the suits, the books, the espresso machine I'd actually paid for but he claimed was his. I found receipts I'd never seen before, charges on my credit cards I hadn't noticed, small things at first, then bigger purchases. He'd been stealing from me for months, maybe longer. Rachel came over when I finally turned my phone back on and saw her 43 missed calls. "I'm so sorry," she said, holding me while I sobbed. "I had no idea he was like this. Tom is devastated. He feels responsible for introducing you." "Did Tom ever actually work with him?" I asked. Rachel's face said everything. "For about 3 months. Then Kenny was let go. Tom didn't want to say anything because, well, Kenny said he was going to tell you himself. So everyone knew but me. Everyone knew I was dating an unemployed con artist who was bleeding me dry. The humiliation was almost worse than the heartbreak. Kenny showed up that night, despite my telling him not to. He stood outside my apartment building for hours, calling up to my window, leaving flowers at the door. The neighbors complained, and eventually someone called the police. I watched from my window as they escorted him away, his perfect suit wrinkled, his perfect hair a mess. He looked up and saw me watching, mouthed, "I love you." I closed the curtains and didn't look back. The aftermath was worse than the breakup itself. With Kenny gone, I had to face the true extent of my financial damage. I was $18,000 in credit card debt, 2 months behind on rent, and my checking account was overdrawn. I'd been so focused on keeping us afloat that I hadn't realized I'd already drowned. My landlord was surprisingly understanding when I explained the situation, but understanding didn't mean lenient. I had 30 days to catch up on rent or face eviction. I took on extra freelance projects, worked 60-hour weeks, sold everything valuable I owned, my grandmother's jewelry, my laptop, even my car. It still wasn't enough. That's when Rosalie entered my life. She responded to my desperate Craigslist ad for a roommate, showing up with purple hair, a nose ring, and the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. "So, your ex screwed you over?" she said after I explained why I suddenly needed a roommate in a one-bedroom apartment. "Men are trash. I'll take the living room. When do I move in?" Just like that, I had help with rent and an unexpected friend. Rosalie was everything. Kenny wasn't genuine, generous, actually employed. She worked as a nurse, picking up extra shifts to help when she saw me struggling. She'd bring home leftover food from the hospital cafeteria, pretending she couldn't eat it all herself. Things were starting to stabilize when Kenny resurfaced. It had been 2 months since I'd kicked him out, and I was finally sleeping through the night without crying. Then I got a text from an unknown number. "I know you hate me, but I need your help. I'm in trouble." I knew I should delete it, block the number, move on, but something made me respond. "What kind of trouble?" "Melissa's father found out I was lying. He's threatening to press charges for fraud. I need $5,000 for a lawyer or I'm going to jail." I actually laughed out loud. Rosalie looked over from where she was studying. "What's funny?" I showed her the message. She grabbed my phone and typed back, "Go to jail. Maybe they'll teach you accountability there." But Kenny didn't give up. The texts kept coming. From different numbers. He was sorry. He was suicidal. He was homeless. He was dying. Each message was more dramatic than the last, designed to trigger my compassion. I finally broke and agreed to meet him at a coffee shop in neutral territory. He looked terrible. The designer suits were gone, replaced by jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt. He'd lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, stubble that had grown past artfully scruffy into actually unkempt. Part of me, a part I hated, wanted to comfort him. "You look good," he said as I sat down. "You look like hell." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Yeah, well, karma's a bitch, right? What do you want, Kenny?" "I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not the manipulative bullshit I tried before. I used you, Nancy. I took advantage of your kindness, your love, your trust. I'm a terrible person. I waited for the but, for the excuse, for the request for money. It didn't come. I'm in therapy now," he continued. "Court mandated, but still. The therapist says I have narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. Basically, I'm a clinical asshole." "You needed a therapist to tell you that?" "I needed a therapist to help me understand why. My dad, he was the same way. Used my mom, cheated, lied, left us with nothing. I swore I'd never be like him, and then I became him, maybe worse." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "This is $1,500. I know it's nowhere near what I owe you, but it's all I have. I've been working construction, saving everything I can. I'll get you the rest, I promise." I took the envelope, suspicious. "Why now?" "Because I'm trying to be better. Because you deserved so much more than what I gave you. Because maybe if I can make things right with you, I can start to become someone worth being." He stood to leave, then turned back. "I know you'll never forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I wanted you to know that what we had, in the good parts, they were real for me. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it because that's what I do. I destroy good things." After he left, I sat in that coffee shop for an hour, the envelope of cash in my hands, crying. Not because I missed him or wanted him back, but because I was mourning the person I'd been before him. The trusting, optimistic woman who believed in love and second chances. She was gone, and I didn't know if I'd ever get her back. The $1,500 helped, but it wasn't enough to save me from the financial hole I was in. 3 months after Kenny's coffee shop apology, I lost my job. The company was downsizing, and my performance had been slipping for months. Too many sick days, too much stress, too little focus. They gave me 2 weeks severance and wished me luck. I applied for unemployment, food stamps, anything I could think of. The girl who'd once had a healthy savings account and perfect credit was now choosing between eating and keeping the lights on. Rosalie tried to help, but she was barely making it herself. "We'll figure it out," she said, hugging me as I sobbed over my 3rd rejection letter of the week. "We're survivors, Nancy. Survivors figure it out." But I wasn't sure I was a survivor. I felt like I was drowning in slow motion, each day pulling me further under. I developed a fever that wouldn't break, probably from stress and malnutrition, but I couldn't afford to go to urgent care. I just suffered through it, sweating through my sheets, hallucinating from dehydration. On the 4th day of the fever, I dragged myself to the bus stop to get to a job interview. I made it 3 blocks before collapsing. A stranger called 911, and I woke up in the hospital with an IV in my arm and a $3,000 bill I couldn't pay. "You had severe dehydration and a kidney infection," the doctor said. "You're lucky someone found you when they did." Luck. I didn't feel lucky. I felt broken. Rosalie picked me up from the hospital, tears streaming down her face. You could have died, Nancy. Why didn't you tell me how bad it was? Because I'm tired of being a burden. You're not a burden. You're my friend. And friends don't let friends die at bus stops. She took time off work to take care of me, made sure I ate, forced me to drink water every hour. Slowly, I started to recover. Not just physically, but mentally too. I'd hit rock bottom, and somehow, I was still breathing. A week later, I got a call from a tech startup where I'd interviewed months earlier. They wanted to offer me a position junior to what I'd had before, but with good benefits and room for growth. When can you start? The hiring manager asked. Tomorrow, I said without hesitation. The new job saved me. Not just financially, though the steady paycheck meant I could finally start paying down debt. It gave me purpose again. Structure. A reason to get up in the morning. My coworkers didn't know my history, didn't look at me with pity or judgment. I was just Nancy, the new developer who brought homemade cookies on Fridays and always volunteered for the difficult projects. 6 months into the job, I'd paid off 3 credit cards and was current on all my bills. Rosalie and I moved to a better apartment, one where we each had our own room and the hot water actually worked. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and casual dinners, testing the waters of trusting someone new. That's when Kenny showed up again. Valentine's Day, of all days. I was coming home from a particularly good date with Marcus, a teacher who made me laugh and always insisted on splitting the check. There was Kenny, standing outside my building with grocery store roses and a small velvet box. Before you say anything, he started, I'm not here to win you back. I know that ship has sailed. I wanted to give you this. He handed me the box. Inside was a ring, not the Tiffany's ring he'd bought for Melissa, but a simple silver band with a small sapphire, my birthstone. This is what I should have given you, he said. Not as an engagement ring, just as a promise that I was going to be better. I bought it with my own money, from my construction job. It's not much, but it's honest. I looked at the ring, then at him, the man who'd nearly destroyed me, standing there with grocery store flowers and a ring that probably cost less than the dinner I just had with Marcus. Kenny, I don't want this. I know, I just needed to give it to you, to close the chapter properly. The chapter is already closed. For you, maybe, but I needed to do this for me, to prove to myself that I could do something right. Even if it's too late. I handed the box back. Prove it to someone else. Someone who hasn't already paid the price for your self-improvement journey. He nodded, tucking the box back in his pocket. I'm paying you back, you know, another $1,000 every month. Check your bank account. I had been checking, and the deposits were there. No notes, no strings, just money appearing monthly, like clockwork. It would take him years to pay back everything he owed, but he was trying. Goodbye, Kenny. Goodbye, Nancy. Be happy. You deserve it. That was supposed to be the end. Kenny walking away on Valentine's Day, me going upstairs to my new life, both of us moving forward on separate paths. But life is never that clean, that neat, that Hollywood. 3 months later, I got a call from Rachel. Have you seen the news? Kenny had been arrested. Not for the fraud with Melissa's father, but for a Ponzi scheme he'd been running through his construction company connections. He'd been taking money from undocumented workers, promising to help them get legal status, then disappearing with their life savings. The man who'd been paying me back with monthly deposits was stealing from people even more vulnerable than I'd been. I felt sick. The money in my account, was it from them? Was I inadvertently benefiting from his latest victims? I called the detective handling the case, explained my history with Kenny, offered to testify if needed. The detective took my statement, said they'd be in touch. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a courtroom, watching Kenny in an orange jumpsuit, telling a judge about the man who'd convinced me to drain my savings for his fake job training. He looked at me once during my testimony. Not with anger or betrayal, but with something like acceptance. Like he knew this was always how it would end. He got 5 years, eligible for parole in 3 with good behavior. I didn't stay for the sentencing. I'd said what I needed to say. I donated every penny he'd paid me back to a fund for his victims. It wasn't enough to make them whole, but it was something. Clean money for a clean conscience. Rosalie was waiting for me outside the courthouse. You okay? Yeah, I said, and meant it. I'm okay. We went for drinks, fancy cocktails at a rooftop bar I never could have afforded in my Kenny days. Marcus met us there, kissing my cheek, asking how it went. I had people now, real people, who showed up without being asked, who gave without keeping score. To surviving, Rosalie toasted. To thriving, I countered. We clinked glasses as the sun set over the city, painting everything gold. Somewhere across town, Kenny was being processed into a federal prison. Somewhere else, his victims were trying to rebuild, just like I had. And here I was, scarred but whole, broken but rebuilt, sitting with people who loved me for exactly who I was. The next morning, I woke up debt-free for the first time in 3 years. I'd made the final payment on my last credit card the night before, a symbolic gesture timed with Kenny's sentencing. I was free, financially, emotionally, completely. I kept one thing from our relationship. Not the shoebox of notes. which I'd burned in a therapeutic bonfire with Rosalie. Not photos or gifts or memories. I kept the lesson that sometimes the most expensive education comes from the people who cost us everything. That survival isn't just about making it through. It's about choosing who we become on the other side. Kenny taught me that I could survive anything. But I taught myself that I deserved better than just surviving. I deserved love that didn't come with a price tag, trust that didn't require verification, a life that was mine to build or burn as I chose. The chapter was closed. The book, however, was just beginning.